My dad and stepmom literally changed the locks on my house, trying to steal it from my pregnant stepsister. But the second I stood up for myself, their worst fear turned real. I'm a 30-year-old guy living solo in the home my mom left me when she passed away 6 years back. It's nothing extravagant, just a simple 4-bedroom spot in a quiet neighborhood, but it's cozy, and more importantly, it's mine. What really matters is that this house came from my mom. She put her entire life into making it ours, and when she was gone, she made sure I knew it was meant to keep me grounded. This place isn't just where I sleep, it's a part of her legacy. Growing up, my mom was the only real parent I could count on. She had her flaws, sure, but she always showed up for me. My dad? Not so much. After the divorce, he kind of disappeared from my life. He moved on fast, remarried in what felt like no time, and everything changed. Suddenly, his new wife became his entire universe, and her daughter, Brooke, was treated like a princess. Brooke's 27 now and expecting a baby. I've got no problem with her being pregnant. That's not the issue here. The real problem is her attitude, like the whole world owes her something just for existing. And my dad and her mom have been feeding that attitude since we were kids. If Brooke wants it, she gets it. Doesn't matter if it's a brand new car, a fancy trip, or just some random thing she saw online. They jump through hoops to make sure she's happy. She's got this spoiled, I receive mentality that drives me nuts. I've mostly stayed out of it all. I still see my dad occasionally, but I've drawn a clear line. I enjoy having my space. My house is where I can breathe, unwind, and just live my life without anyone intruding. I've got a steady job, a solid group of friends, and a simple routine that works for me. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm doing fine, and that's more than a lot of folks can say nowadays. It's just me in this house, and honestly, that suits me perfectly. No drama, no roommates, just peace and quiet, which I really needed after losing my mom. But then, Brooke came back into the picture. A few months ago, her boyfriend, some guy named Jake, walked out on her. I wasn't shocked. From the start, the dude gave off serious run when it gets tough vibes. Oddly enough, Brooke didn't seem too upset about it. From what I heard, she went straight back to her mom and my dad, and they immediately went into full-blown pampering mode. Cooking for her, buying baby supplies, treating her like she was made of porcelain. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Not my circus, not my monkeys. But then out of nowhere, I get a call from my dad saying he wants to talk. That's rare, so I figured something serious was going on. I went over to their place, and the vibe was weird right away. My dad and stepmom were sitting at the kitchen table, and Brooke was there too, gently rubbing her belly like a big, blinking sign to remind everyone she's pregnant. They started with some empty small talk that clearly had a motive behind it. My dad asked about work, and his wife nodded like she cared, but you could feel it coming. Then, just like that, they jumped in. My dad said Brooke needed a place to stay because their home was too tight, with a baby on the way. And before I could react, my stepmom jumped in with this fake sweet voice but sharp words. She said something like, well, since you're living alone in that big house and you're not married or tied down, it only makes sense for Brooke to move in. She needs more space for the baby, and you could find something smaller that suits your lifestyle better. This wasn't them asking, it was more like they were informing me of a decision they'd already made. My dad even said they'd checked out some apartments for me, like that made the whole thing more reasonable. I was stunned. It felt like they didn't care at all about what the house meant to me. To them, it was just an extra room they could shuffle people into. They acted like my life didn't really count because I'm not married or a parent. Like my home didn't matter as much since I don't have a family. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard them. Who says stuff like that with a straight face? But nope, they were absolutely serious. Apparently, this was a plan they'd cooked up a while back and were just waiting to spring on me. I told them flat out, no way. That house isn't just some building. It's my home. It's one of the last pieces of my mom I have left, and the thought of giving it up for someone like Brooke was ridiculous. I tried to get that across, but they didn't want to hear it. They kept hammering on about family helping family, and how I didn't need all that space because I'm not raising kids. It was like I was talking to a couple of robots. Nothing I said got through. Brooke barely spoke, but the smug grin on her face said plenty. She looked way too confident, like she just knew they'd break me down eventually. That's how it's always gone for her. People give in, and she gets exactly what she wants. At one point, I turned to her and said, Brooke, do you actually want to live in my house? Seriously? This is my space, my home. Why don't you move into one of those apartments you so kindly researched? I mean, You already did the homework, right? Funny how suddenly those places aren't good enough for you. But somehow it makes perfect sense for me to give up my home. I stared at Brooke, waiting for any kind of reaction. She just blinked like the idea of her being the one to compromise had never even crossed her mind. Before she could say anything, her mom swooped in with that sickly sweet tone she always uses when she's about to say something awful. "Oh, sweetheart, you just don't get it. Brooke needs stability. An apartment just can't offer the kind of comfort and space she and the baby will need." I couldn't help but laugh, though it came out more bitter than amused. So let me get this straight. My own stability doesn't count for anything? My comfort's irrelevant, huh? You people are unreal. They sat there, staring at me like I was the unreasonable one. You show up here basically demanding I flip my whole life upside down for Brooke, and you expect me to just say sure, no problem? Come on. Brooke didn't budge an inch. She kept her arms crossed, that smug little smile still sitting on her face like she'd already won and just had to wait it out. She wasn't even pretending to participate. She left all the talking to her mom and my dad, like she was too good to explain herself. It was obvious she thought this was a done deal. Her mom switched gears, voice sharper now, less sugar and more vinegar. "This isn't about you. It's about doing what's best for the family. Brooke's bringing a new life into the world. Doesn't that matter more than your need for extra space?" Then came the kicker. "You're a grown man. You don't need a whole house to yourself. It's selfish to hold on to something that could help give her and the baby a better future." I just stared at her. The nerve. "Selfish?" I said, practically stunned. "You're calling me selfish for keeping the house my mother left me? This place isn't just extra square footage to me, it's where I've built my life. And you want me to just give it up like it means nothing?" That's when my dad decided to chime in, letting out this big, tired sigh like he was the one under pressure. "We're not saying you have to give it up forever," he said, like that made everything okay. "Just think of it as helping Brooke get on her feet. Once she's back on track, maybe she moves out, and you can figure out a new plan for yourself. We're just trying to look out for everyone." "For everyone?" I snapped, my voice rising. "No, you're trying to look out for her. Let's stop pretending this is about the whole family. This is about you doing everything in your power for Brooke, again, and expecting me to fix it all. Well, I'm not cleaning up this mess." Brooke's mom gave me this narrowed glare, like she couldn't believe I wasn't falling in line. "That's what family does," she snapped. "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. If your mother were still here..." I cut her off right there, voice cold enough to freeze the room. "Don't you dare bring my mom into this. She left me this house because she trusted I'd protect it. She knew exactly how things would go with you all, and that's why none of you are even mentioned in her will. So don't sit there pretending to know what she would have wanted. You don't have a clue." The room fell silent. No one said a word. My dad got up and busied himself with something in the kitchen, clearly uncomfortable. Brooke stayed put, arms still crossed, that smug look never leaving her face. She wasn't even trying to hide it. She thought I'd eventually cave, just like everyone else always had. She didn't need to argue or explain herself. She was just waiting it out, convinced it was only a matter of time before she got her way. But this time, she picked the wrong guy to mess with. This house isn't a bargaining chip. It's not up for grabs. My mom gave it to me, and I'm not about to let them guilt-trip me into giving it away. Still, I had this feeling in my gut that the fight wasn't over. They didn't storm out or make a final plea. They left things hanging, like they figured I'd come around if they just stayed persistent. But I didn't. I stood my ground and thought maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how insane the whole idea was after hearing me say no so clearly. Turns out, that was just the warm-up. My dad and stepmom decided the key was to wear me down, little by little. The comments started creeping in, subtle at first. My dad would call and casually ask if I'd given any more thought to helping out. His wife sent me articles about supporting single moms, probably thinking I'd read one and suddenly feel inspired to donate my home. Brooke didn't say much directly, but she clearly believed her parents would bulldoze their way to victory. Then they turned up the pressure. Literally. They started popping by uninvited, not for friendly visits, but with obvious agendas. Every single time, they'd steer the conversation back to Brooke and how urgent her situation was. One time, my dad actually showed up with a box of baby clothes in his arms and just strolled in like everything was normal. "Where should I put these for now?" he asked, like this was already happening. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Back in your house." He gave me this wounded look, like I'd just kicked his puppy. "It's just temporary," he said. "You're not even using the guest room." "And that guest room," I replied, "is for guests. Not for storage. Not for uninvited stunts." Guests. He muttered something under his breath and took the box back out to his car. That little showdown with the stroller basically set the tone for every run-in after that. Each time we spoke, they floated some new plan that involved me giving up my home, and every single time, I shot it down. What really got under my skin was the way they looked at the house. They didn't see it as mine, not really. To them, it was just a useful asset, something they could reassign however they saw fit. My mom left it to me in her will, but the way they acted, you'd think I was just babysitting it for Brooke until she decided it was time to move in. And the worst part? They made me out to be the bad guy. They kept spinning the narrative like I was hoarding all this space out of pure pettiness. As if refusing to hand over my home somehow made me the selfish one. It didn't matter how many times I explained myself. They didn't listen. I had to defend my no, like it was up for debate, over and over again. Then things escalated. Brooke decided it was time to get more involved herself. One afternoon, she just pulled up in front of my house, popped open her trunk, and asked me to help her bring in a stroller. I looked at her like she was out of her damn mind. "Why are you bringing a stroller here?" I asked, already bracing for the nonsense that was about to follow. "Well, I don't have room for it right now," she replied, all casual, like that explained everything. I stood there, stunned at how casually she assumed my place was a drop-off zone for her baby gear. "That's not my problem," I told her, the irritation rising in my voice. And just like that, she snapped. She launched into this dramatic rant about how I was making things harder than they needed to be. According to her, I was being heartless and unhelpful, like I personally caused every problem in her life. "Family's supposed to help each other," she barked, like that line was some kind of moral trump card. Then she added, "You have no idea what it's like to be pregnant," with this condescending tone, like I was some idiot who couldn't possibly grasp real-world struggles. She wasn't wrong. I've never been pregnant. But you know what I do understand? Responsibility. And unlike her, I've been handling mine without expecting everyone else to clean up my messes. I don't go around demanding to live in other people's homes just because I didn't plan ahead. So I looked her right in the eye and said, "Your problems aren't mine to solve. I'm not flipping my whole life upside down just because you refuse to get yours together." That hit a nerve. Her face twisted into this look of pure outrage, like I just told her she wasn't the center of the universe. Which, let's be real, I kind of did. She stormed off in a dramatic huff, but not before tossing one last threat over her shoulder. "You're going to regret this someday." The irony? She didn't even hear herself. This was the first time in her life someone didn't fold to her demands, and she had no idea how to deal with it. Instead of realizing how absurd she was being, she painted me as the unreasonable one. Dragging a stroller to my house and assuming she could just move in? That was next-level delusion. It was like she honestly believed the place was already hers, and I was just some hurdle she needed to clear. But they didn't stop there. A few days later, my dad showed up, with a realtor. No warning, no heads up. I was sitting in my living room when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there he was, standing next to a woman holding a clipboard. "I thought we could look at some options for you," he said like we were planning a vacation. I didn't even let them get past the doorway. "Nope," I said, shutting it in their faces. That was it for me. That moment made it crystal clear. I couldn't trust them anymore. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the principle. They thought they could wear me down with pressure and guilt, the way they always had with Brooke. But I'm not her, and I don't roll over for anyone. That night, I picked up the phone and called a security company. I had cameras installed around the house, nothing too fancy, but enough to give me peace of mind. I had no idea what their next move would be, but I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. I was done hoping they'd come to their senses. I didn't feel safe anymore, not just physically, but legally. I started worrying they might find some sneaky way to get me kicked out, or worse, try to claim the house somehow. I knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to stop until they hit a wall they couldn't knock down. So I became that wall. I decided I wasn't going to play along anymore. No more talks, no more justifying myself. The answer was no, and it was going to stay no. But of course, they weren't done yet. They always found a new angle. One evening, I came home from work, just relieved to finally kick back and relax. But when I tried to unlock my door, the key didn't work. At first, I figured maybe I grabbed the wrong one. I tried again, and again. Then it hit me, someone had changed the locks. My stomach dropped. I looked down and saw a folded piece of paper taped to the front door. The note read, "We've changed the locks for safety. Please contact us to discuss this." Signed by my dad. I almost laughed. It was so outrageous. but the fury that hit me was stronger than anything I'd felt in a long time. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and called my dad. He answered after a few rings, sounding completely casual, like what he did wasn't completely insane. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, barely holding back the anger in my voice. "Why the hell are the locks on my house changed?" I demanded. "It's just temporary," my dad said, like that was supposed to make this mess sound less insane. "We were only trying to help Brooke. You've been so resistant, and we figured this might be the smoothest way to make things easier for everyone." "For everyone?" I shot back. "You mean for you and Brooke? You've crossed every damn boundary I had. This is straight-up trespassing. And if you think I'm going to let this slide, you've lost your mind." His voice immediately shifted from calm to panicked. "Please don't call the police. Don't escalate this. It'll look bad for the family." "For the family?" I snapped. "You seriously think I care how this looks for the family right now? Let me spell it out for you. You're going to call whoever changed the locks and have them reverse it today. Or I'm calling the cops. And I will press charges for trespassing and trying to take what's not yours." There was silence on the other end. I could tell he wanted to argue, maybe even expected me to backpedal, but I wasn't budging. Eventually, his tone softened even more. Okay, we'll take care of it. But you're being so difficult. We're just trying to do what's best for Brooke and her baby. You know this isn't permanent." I didn't even acknowledge the guilt trip. "You've got until the end of the day. That's your window. After that, it's a police matter. And no, this isn't up for discussion." He tried to mumble a few half-hearted protests, but eventually he gave in. I ended the call without another word, my hands shaking with pure anger. This wasn't just another line they crossed. It was a deliberate, calculated move to steal something that wasn't theirs. They violated my space, my home, and every bit of trust one had left. A few hours later, the locksmith returned and switched the locks back. My dad didn't even show up. Neither did Brooke or her mother. I stood by the door the whole time, watching the guy like a hawk, making damn sure everything was restored properly. When it was finally over, I sat down in the living room, my living room, just staring at the walls. The place didn't even feel like a home in that moment. It felt like a war zone. Not a literal one, but an emotional battlefield. What they did wasn't some desperate plea, it was a declaration. I knew then that this wasn't just going to blow over. If they were willing to go this far, there was no telling what their next move might be. But if they thought I was going to roll over and let them bulldoze me, they were about to get a very rude awakening. That night, I stayed up into the early hours, making calls, going over paperwork, trying to lock down every possible vulnerability. I didn't want to leave even a crack open for them to slither through. What haunted me wasn't just what they did, it was how normal they made it seem. Like they deserved my house. Like my mom's will didn't mean anything and my years living there didn't count. To them, it was just a building they felt entitled to because they wanted it. At that point, I started taking real legal steps. I made an appointment with a lawyer and sat down to lay everything out. The nonstop pressure, the emotional manipulation, the lock-changing stunt, all of it. He listened carefully, asking pointed questions about the deed, the will, and my dad's behavior lately. I thought he was just being thorough until he leaned back, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "There's something you need to know." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Your father already looked into contesting your mother's will," he said. I blinked. "Wait, what? When?" "Months ago," he replied. He never filed anything officially, but he did consult a lawyer. From what I gathered, he was hoping to claim the house was marital property, not a personal inheritance. He was searching for any legal loophole he could exploit. I sat there in disbelief. All this time, while pretending he was just trying to help or play peacemaker, my dad had been planning to take the house out from under me. This wasn't just some emotional mess stirred up by Brooke and her mom. This was premeditated. They'd been laying the groundwork long before the pressure started. My lawyer quickly added, probably seeing the look on my face, "He doesn't have much of a case. Your mom's will is crystal clear. The property was left to you directly and unconditionally. There's no wiggle room for him. But the fact that he even tried says a lot. That wasn't just a betrayal, it was calculated." He'd been smiling to my face while quietly hunting for ways to take the one thing my mom left me. The manipulation, the constant guilt trips, the twisted arguments, it all made perfect sense now. None of this was about Brooke needing help. It was about them trying to seize something they had no right to. Hearing all of this lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. This was about defending my mom's legacy. She worked her whole damn life for this house. And every scheme, every sneaky little move they made, It was a slap in the face to her memory. So no, I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to see reason or make peace or find a compromise. I was going to fight. Every step of the way. This house is mine, and I'm not giving it up. And don't worry, I'll let you all know exactly what happens next. Update 1. Hey everyone. I figured it was time to check in now that I've taken a few more steps. After hearing everything from my lawyer, I couldn't stop replaying all the moments I'd had with my dad lately, every offhand comment, every manipulative little gesture. I realized I couldn't keep pretending like this was just a misunderstanding or a family argument. So I made a decision. I was going to confront him directly and let him know that I knew what he'd been trying to pull. So I decided to confront him directly. No calls, no texts. I just showed up at his house unannounced, the same way he and his wife had been showing up at mine without warning for months. When he opened the door, he looked caught off guard, sure, but not a hint of guilt on his face. And honestly, that's what hit the hardest. He stood there like he had nothing to answer for. Like none of this was even a big deal. I didn't waste time. I want to know why you were looking into contesting Mom's will, I said, cutting right to it. His face twisted, part confusion, part defensive instinct. What are you talking about? He asked, feigning total ignorance. I have no idea where you got that from. It's not true. Don't lie to me, I shot back. I know you spoke to a lawyer months ago. So let's cut the crap. What were you planning to do? He started stammering, scrambling for words. It's not what you think. I wasn't trying to take anything. I was just exploring options for the family. For the family? I repeated, my voice sharp and full of disbelief. Let's not play that game. This wasn't about the family, it was about Brooke. You were plotting to take the only thing Mom left me, and now you're trying to wrap it in some noble excuse. I wasn't planning anything, he snapped back, but the cracks were showing. I was just seeing what could be done. The house is way too much space for you alone, and Brooke, she's in a tough spot. She needs somewhere stable. And that justifies trying to take my home? I said, my voice rising. You didn't even bother to talk to me first. You went behind my back. You tried to guilt-trip me and manipulate me, and now you're standing here like you were doing me a favor. It wasn't like that, he said again, but it was weak. His eyes darted everywhere, avoiding mine, like they always did when he couldn't admit he was wrong. I stood there a moment, waiting, hoping, maybe, that he'd finally own up to it, that he'd apologize or explain in a way that made sense. But he didn't. So I shook my head and turned to leave. I wasn't about to waste more time arguing with someone who couldn't even admit to what he'd done. That conversation sealed the deal. I couldn't trust him anymore. He wasn't acting like a dad. He was acting like someone who thought he had a right to control my life and take what wasn't his, all to suit his own version of what's best. When I got back home, I immediately called my lawyer and gave him the rundown. He reassured me, again, that my mom's will was ironclad. My dad didn't have a case, and there was no legal way he could get his hands on the house. But that didn't mean they'd stop trying. This was never just about laws and paperwork. This was about exhaustion. They wanted to wear me down until I just gave up and let them win. For the next few weeks, I was in constant battle mode, filing documents, attending meetings, and always watching my back. I made sure every legal detail was locked up tight. I had the house officially confirmed under my name with zero wiggle room. I upgraded the security system again. More cameras, more coverage. I even signed up for a title monitoring service, just in case they tried to get clever. Honestly, it felt like I was preparing to defend a fortress. And in a way, I was. Meanwhile, Brooke amped up her own efforts. She started posting cryptic stuff on social media, vague jabs about being let down by family and fighting for what's right. She didn't mention my name, but it was obvious who she was aiming at. People we both knew started reaching out. Is everything okay? Is there any way to make peace? I kept my replies short and straight to the facts. I wasn't about to get dragged into her pity party or make my private fight public. But slowly, their campaign started to crumble. Legal fees were piling up on their side, and my lawyer told me they were running out of options fast. Still, I couldn't relax. Not fully. People like that don't just give up. They wait. They regroup. They come at you sideways when you least expect it. By the time the dust finally started to settle, I was completely drained. Mentally, emotionally, every ounce of energy had gone into protecting my home, my peace, and the memory of what my mom had left me. But I have no regrets. Because this was never just about a building. It was about standing firm when everyone expected me to fold. It was about drawing a line and saying, This is mine. You don't get to take it. My dad and Brooke thought they could guilt me into surrendering. They thought I'd cave under pressure. But instead, I found something stronger in myself, a resolve I didn't even realize I had until they tried to break it. Now, I'm honestly considering cutting ties with them for good. There's only so much manipulation a person can take before it becomes toxic to keep the connection going. For now, things have gone quiet. But I'm not naive. If they try anything again, I'll be ready. And if they do, maybe I'll be back with another update. Let me lay it out for you. After trying every underhanded move they could think of to force me out of my home, they finally backed off, at least for a while. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months, with complete silence. No surprise visits, no guilt-tripping texts, no calls. Not a word from Brooke, her mom, or my dad. It felt eerie, to be honest. Like the calm before a storm. Part of me suspected they were just regrouping, planning their next play. But I wasn't about to complain about the quiet. I took the peace where I could get it. During that downtime, I heard, through mutuals, that Brooke had her baby. A healthy little boy, apparently. I figured maybe they were too busy adjusting to parenthood to keep harassing me. Or maybe, just maybe, they'd finally accepted that I wasn't giving in. Then one evening, just as the sun was going down, I heard a knock at the door. I checked my security system like I always do, and there they were, my dad, his wife, and Brooke, standing outside like they were about to stage some kind of family therapy session. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I wanted to hear what kind of excuse they'd cooked up this time. The moment I cracked the door, my dad's wife launched into one of her polished little speeches. She said they'd spent time reflecting, wanted to move forward, and thought it was time we reunite as a family. Then came the twist. They were offering me one last opportunity to make things right. Brooke chimed in next, holding her baby like he was part of the pitch. She poured out this carefully crafted monologue about how hard life had been, how she dreamed of raising her son surrounded by family, and how deep down she believed I could still do the right thing if I just let go of my pride. Same old song, just with a prettier melody. My dad played the peacekeeper again, talking about how family means more than property and how I needed to think about the bigger picture, not just myself. I let them finish. I didn't interrupt. I stood there, listening half out of morbid curiosity, half to be polite. When they finally quieted down, I took a breath and said what I'd been holding in for months. This is my home, I said, voice steady. My mom left it to me. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm not giving it up. I don't care how many speeches you rehearse or how emotional you try to make it sound. The answer is no. That should have ended the conversation. But of course, it didn't. Brooke's mom immediately blew up, throwing every guilt-laced accusation she could come up with, telling me I was selfish, heartless, choosing material things over family, and failing some imaginary duty I never agreed to. Then Brooke took her turn, playing the same script she'd used a dozen times before. She cried, called me cold, said I was leaving her and her baby out in the cold, and that someday I'd look back and regret not helping them when they needed me most. My dad stood there and said nothing for the longest time. He didn't jump in to defend me or calm anyone down. He just stood there and watched it all unfold, silent, helpless, or maybe just done pretending. I didn't rise to their level. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. You've already stomped on every line I've drawn, I told them. You've lied, manipulated, and tried to take what doesn't belong to you. And now you're here again, pretending like you're the ones being wronged? I'm done. Get off my property. But they didn't move. Brooke's mom kept running her mouth, trying to shame me into submission. Brooke echoed her with little barbs about how families support each other and how I was cruel for turning my back on them. Finally, my dad spoke, but all he could manage was another weak plea for me to be reasonable and see things their way. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I turned around, walked back into my house, and locked the door behind me. I was finished playing along with their fantasy. If they wanted to keep testing my patience, they could do it with law enforcement involved. I picked up the phone and called the police. This time, I wasn't just threatening it, I was following through. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, who assured me someone would be on the way soon. I stood by the window, watching them linger in the driveway, still murmuring to each other, like they hadn't done anything wrong. By the time the officers showed up, they'd backed off the porch but were still hanging around. The police spoke with them for a few minutes. From what I could see, they weren't buying the sob story. They laid down the law. Clear and direct. Leave. Do not come back. Watching them drive away under police supervision felt like a victory. A small one, but a meaningful one. Still, the moment came with a heavy finality. Whatever fragile piece of a relationship I had left with my dad shattered completely that night. After they were gone, I sat down and just breathed. I was drained. Emotionally, mentally, it felt like they'd stolen a piece of the safety I used to feel inside my own home. But deep down, I knew I'd made the right call. Drawing a line with people like them isn't just smart, it's survival. That night, I made a choice. I wasn't just done with their house schemes, I was done with them. Entirely. I blocked their numbers, removed them from social media, and told any mutual friends or acquaintances, don't update me. Don't pass messages. I'm done. Cutting them off wasn't easy at first. It felt heavy, like something final had snapped. But when I looked back at everything they put me through, I realized I didn't lose a family. I lost people who never cared about me, just what they could get from me. Instead of clinging to that toxic connection, I leaned into the people who had been there the whole time, my friends. The ones who never once made me feel guilty for having boundaries. The ones who reminded me I wasn't crazy for standing firm. One of them even suggested throwing a housewarming party. Not because I just moved in, but because I'd fought tooth and nail to keep the place. I laughed at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. So I did it. It wasn't a huge thing, just a few close friends, some food, some music. But it was perfect. For the first time in ages, I felt light. I felt proud. I wasn't just hanging on anymore, I was living. Looking back now, I'm proud of how I handled it all. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't painless. But I never backed down. I protected what mattered. I stood up for myself. And I made it clear that I wasn't going to be someone's doormat, no matter who they were. This house? It's more than four walls. It's a symbol of everything I've fought to protect, my peace, my dignity, and the promise my mom left behind. If there's anything this nightmare has taught me, it's this. Blood means nothing without respect, trust, and support. And if someone can't give you those things, then it doesn't matter what title they hold. They don't deserve a place in your life. So, to anyone out there dealing with something similar, don't fold. Draw your lines. Stand your ground. And never let guilt make you hand over your peace. I'm still here. Still in my house. And every time I walk through that front door, I remember what it took to keep it. It's not just a house. It's home.